I'm very sorry about my last minute change in plans, but I'm doing this program now. Seeing as how the vast majority of people watch this program as an archive, not as a live broadcast, although for 19 years I've done it live and I will always continue to do it live. This is the celebrated holiday of New Year's because of the falling of New Year's on Sunday. And just been a sudden change of plans. And I wanted to do this show, but I wasn't going to do it at the normal 6 o'clock time. The motivation to do programs is predicated upon today's show, at least, is the end of a year. And we got one more football game. I know that. But at the end of a football season and things that you should know by now. And if you don't, you're just being stubborn. All right. And fans have a way of just being stubborn. First things first, Kevin Stefanski. Everybody should know that Kevin Stefanski would not be my favorite head coach. But I will say this. He's obviously more capable than Ron Rivera. And it just absolutely mystifies me how a head coach can come into a game not knowing that they're facing elimination, that he could have changed quarterbacks in a week and not known that he was facing elimination. It's just remarkable. So I decided to look up a few things about Ron Rivera to assure Cleveland fans that you're not the only ones to have a coach who just doesn't seem to regularly get it done. Cleveland fans are notorious for woe is me, woe is us, move the franchise, go away. I'm going to cut somebody else's throat, but not my own. So I'm going to point out some things about Ron Rivera. Ron Rivera started out in 2011 as a head coach for the Carolina Panthers, and he rode what used to be the Cam Newton train. But I think it's very interesting that his first 2 years, he was 6-10 and 7-9 before a breakthrough year in which he was 12-4. But the following year, he was 7-8. But the following year, he was 15-1 and won the NFC Championship. But the very next year, he was 6-10 again. And the following year, he was 11-5. And then after that, he was 7-9. And then he was 5-7. And Carolina said, we're sick of this, and fired him. And ever since he got to Washington, 7-9, 7-10. And right now he's 7-8-1. Oh, he's consistent at 7-8, 7-9, 6-10. He had a couple of seasons, and the reason I'm pointing this out, everyone points to Kevin Stefanski's one good season, but things you should know by now. The way you determine whether you have a really good coach or not is not by how angry you get with him week by week, but what the end result is. And right now, it kind of looks like Kevin Stefanski's an 8-9 kind of head coach until he proves otherwise numerically, and that's what he is. And the thing that's weird about Ron Rivera is that at the time, he had some people who could play the game, and he was a defensive coordinator. He had a good defense, and he had Cam Newton, and it just was all over the place, bouncing back and forth. Success, no success. Success, no success. They could never build on something. And one of the reasons why is that he's a defensive coordinator, and he never was really able to put out the kind of offensive product that was necessary. Now we find out then in the week that he was facing elimination, which he didn't even know himself, he decided to switch quarterbacks, which if somebody would have said to me, are you better off with Heineke or are you better off with Wentz? I would have said Heineke, because at least he proved that he could win some games in a row for you and you're facing elimination. But for whatever reason, he threw the dice, I guess you could say. He pushed all of his chips into the middle of the table and hit me. And he pulled up Carson Wentz's card. Carson Wentz can't play football anymore. I think it was pretty clear, you know? Hey, Rick May, how you doing? And hey, R. Jones, how you doing? Nice to see you. Yeah, that's right. Rivera in the post-game conference, the presser, a reporter asked him, and I think the question was really very, how would I put it? Smart-assed, smart aleck. He said, seeing as how, you were, facing elimination, you've been eliminated here. Would you consider starting the third string quarterback in your last game of the season? And Rivera paused and got this confused look on his face, like a middle linebacker who had played in the NFL, who took too many headshots, and said, we've been eliminated? And at that moment, you realized that's why he's the head coach of the Commanders. Daniel Snyder would not settle for anything more than that, right? It's like Jimmy Haslam. Why do you expect people to be good that these people put in that position? Some owners of teams just like to say, do your thing, man, and just let it go. And, Jesus, take the wheel. And then there are other owners who are just constant meddlers, who just feel the need to insert themselves when they know nothing about anything. And Daniel Snyder knows nothing about football, and neither does Jimmy Haslam. So if you don't know it, if you don't know this by now, Ron Rivera is not a good head coach. And if you don't know it by now, Kevin Stefanski has not proven that with the same players building experience in their defensive secondary, that he hasn't put together 2 back-to-back seasons. That's all. Happy New Year, Michael. Woohoo. That's a cow blowing a party favor. Yeah. Even Stefanski would know if he was facing elimination. Of course, every Browns fan, I would think that Mary Kay Cabbagehead would be calling him every hour on the hour. Kevin, you've been eliminated. And, yeah. How could you not see that Carson Wentz is a shell of himself? He's not as mobile, and he just doesn't pull the trigger the same way. His arm strength is diminished. He was floating balls up there. God, it was bad. So again, and I'm not asking Browns fans to analyze Washington Redskins, or Commanders, but they're the Redskins. What's in a name? They still perform the same way. They had everything to win. Why would you make that change when you had everything to win without even knowing that you would be eliminated if you lost, most likely? How would you know? How would you make that decision? I don't know what it is with people, but you got to know this by now. Ron Rivera ain't going to be, somebody will come after him as a defensive coordinator, but he should be terminated immediately. That would be like the most important thing, to go into a game knowing or not knowing. Wow. That's one thing you should know. Here's another thing you should know, and I hope all of you get a chance to listen to this program. And, if you have any friends who are Baker Bros, please point them at this archived broadcast. Because if you don't know by now that Baker Mayfield can't seem to put together good back-to-back performances or great back-to-back performances, if you don't know that by now, you will never know. That was an embarrassment on television, national television. Baker Mayfield only looked good against the downtrodden Denver Broncos, who just came out. And after we found out that their head coach didn't allow them to practice in pads all season long. Now they fired him, the Hackett man. He's gone. Rivera remains for now. I don't know for how long. But everyone, you notice how all the Baker bros spoke up and how all the national media, Baker's back, Baker's back. It's like, Baker should get a job at Dunkin'. That's the kind of baking Baker should be doing. He's not cooking up any great victories anytime soon. If he wakes up feeling dangerous some days, what did he wake up feeling like in this last game against the Chargers? And one thing you notice is that the same things that haunted him in Cleveland haunted him in Carolina. But people said, in Carolina, he didn't have a chance to be Baker. Well, he had wide open offense in Los Angeles. Something you notice, he just won't stay in the pocket. If you don't see this by now, then you're just blind. You're just purposely being difficult. Cleveland would have been worse with Baker Mayfield than they were with Jacoby Brissett, because he would have antagonized teammates along with being totally unpredictable and just having lousy games that handed the game to opponents. And it's funny. The Rams look like the Broncos from the week before. They look like a team that didn't want to play. Isn't that strange? You name Baker as the starting quarterback for the rest of the year, and the players kind of go, I got to think twice about this. You don't know it by now, folks. I'm going to tell you something else if you don't know by now. If you didn't watch the Browns on Sunday because you were actually afraid that Deshaun Watson might show a spark of something, because you've been screaming about him nonstop negatively, take a look at the touchdown pass, the second touchdown pass to Amari Cooper. Watch him step up into the pocket with the pass rush coming from his right-hand side and an arm reaching out to grab him. Watch him step up and smoothly throw the ball right at the perfect moment of the break. Amari Cooper, he threw the ball early, got the ball to him with plenty of opportunity for Amari to run it into the end zone. Baker Mayfield couldn't do that. Nope. So please don't tell me that Baker Mayfield's even in the same league as Deshaun Watson as a quarterback. As a human being, I'm not making evaluations, okay? But if you don't know this by now, you're blind. You're just being obstinate. You just want to be part of the screaming throngs of angry fans. I'm sitting there watching Deshaun Watson and saying, nobody's open. But at the end of the game, in the second half especially, I thought to myself, well, God, when was the last time a quarterback threw two passes of over 30 yards that went for touchdowns so that we scored from the middle of the field or, not in the red zone? We cleanly scored a touchdown through our passing game. That's what seemed unusual about the game. It was like we didn't have to just keep handing it off to Chubb and try to work our way into the end zone and then stammer because we have no wide receivers that can get any serious separation in the red zone. I mean, do you remember it happening? I mean, with Baker, there were a couple of long bomb passes on broken coverages, but you just look at Watson in the pocket and you say to yourself, he can buy time just with a subtle move. The other thing I can tell you that they have in common is that Watson will get sacked and Baker will get sacked. The difference is Baker just gets sacked because he doesn't know where to go with the ball. Watson will eat the ball and take a sack. Nobody's open, and he'll wait and wait and wait for a big play. And if nobody breaks open, he takes a sack. It's been one of the criticisms of Deshaun Watson in his career. But it looks pretty good when he hangs in the pocket and he makes the play downfield, doesn't it? How many times have you seen Baker Mayfield under rush while he's in the pocket, be calm, step up, and deliver a strike 30, 40 yards down the field? So if you don't know the difference of what your eyes are seeing, God help you. Here's another thing you should know by now. There never was a Chubb Kareem Hunt 1-2 punch. There never was, because they just didn't play in the game at the same time. I mean, looking at this historically, they barely played together on the field at the same time. Defenses knew that either Chubb was going to get the ball or in relief. Kareem Hunt was kind of like a relief pitcher. When Chubb just got tired from running so far, they just put Kareem Hunt in to fall down on the ground. But they weren't in the game. This whole notion of, the Chubb Hunt 1-2 punch, it never existed. Please make it stop. Stop these things that didn't exist. You're just inventing things that aren't real. Kareem Hunt could be anybody because anybody can just play a couple of snaps a game and fall down on the ground. Kareem Hunt accomplished nothing for the Cleveland Browns because the system that he played in just didn't work. I hope Kareem Hunt goes somewhere and gets used, but I got to tell you, he looks positively slow to the hole now compared to Nick Chubb. There would be no reason except for pure stamina issues for you to even play Kareem Hunt in Cleveland. Why not let Ford, even though he looked a little smallish, I'll be honest with you, let him run through the hole? I thought Dearness Johnson was great as a backup guy. But that's obviously, Dearness wants an opportunity to play more snaps, and who can blame him? These are things that are obvious. Here's another thing that's obvious. Amari Cooper can get downfield and make plays. This was the number 4 defense that we were playing against, the Commanders. He got open downfield, and he doesn't do it with blinding speed or with science. He does it just by running sharp patterns. Can you imagine if we actually had threats on either side of him? No offense to DPJ, but please, can we finally admit that DPJ is a possession receiver? Please, can we be honest with ourselves at least? He's a great 3. He's not a 1 or a 2. Can we admit that together? Because it's obvious. If you don't know that, you're not watching. He will catch the ball, and as a 3, he is a valuable guy to have on the team, but he's not a 2. And if you had a 2 who is just the opposite of Amari Cooper, a big fast guy instead of a little fast guy, somebody you could throw the ball up in the air to, the thing with Baker Mayfield wanted to wind up and throw the ball as hard as he could. Oh, you're not willing to admit that yet? Okay, take a look at the evidence. Why do you think Baker Mayfield was throwing balls over people's heads and floating passes? Because he has no touch. That's the reason why. Have you ever seen him throw a touch pass in your life? Have you ever seen Baker go back and just throw the ball like a feather in the air so that the receiver could run under it? Fuck no. Arm talent is more than how far you can throw the ball, and Baker can throw the ball a long way. But he's like a car without gears, man. He's only got one gear, and that's to wind up and fire it. And when he tried to touch the ball, it just would just hang up, get intercepted, or fly 2 feet over the receiver's head. But if you don't know that, it's a shame I have to explain this to you. But Watson, oh, he could get that ball up in the air. He can place a ball where a receiver can fight for it, assuming we had the kind of guy who is big and could fight for it. If we get somehow our hands on a viable 2 wide receiver, then assuming these guys be healthy, which is a problem. Amari Cooper's been playing hurt. But, having another guy like David Bell doesn't help you. That's DPJ's job. DPJ is a big Jarvis Landry, right? That's what he is. He's a physical matchup. But he's not a guy who's just going to flat out outrun you. What's so foolish about him being a punt returner? He's not. I mean, he does have straight line speed, but he's not a guy who's going to cut and make you miss, that kind of thing. He's a guy who's going to go up and fight for the ball. He's a 3. And with the love that we have of tight ends, for the life of me, I don't understand. He's not a tight end, but as a wide receiver, he's kind of a hybrid. He's kind of a cross between a tight end and a wide receiver. He'd be the perfect 3 in a system if Kevin Stefanski would get his head out of his ass and quit worrying about the 1-3 offensive alignment and stop with the 3 tight ends and just use what you have to push people down the field a little bit more. That's the thing that surprised the hell out of the Commanders, besides the fact that their head coach has some kind of memory lapse. It wasn't just Chubb running the ball for 104 yards. It was that the completions that were made hurt them downfield. And the Browns were willing to do this in the face of the pass rush that they have with Sweat and with Chase Young, still able to get that ball down the field. We didn't see that with Jacoby Brissett. We didn't see it with Baker Mayfield. Now we're starting to see it. And now we go into our final game. We're playing for nothing, but the Steelers are. The Steelers aren't out of it. Michael, you have a hell of a good sense of humor. You're asking me where Lawyer Tillman and Michael Jackson's dead because of the whole anesthesia to sleep thing. And Lawyer Tillman probably needed a lawyer. I have no idea. They're all where Willis Adams went, Michael. To me, the system can easily be abridged, but you see, alas, the head coach in Cleveland is as narrow-minded as the Cleveland fans are. You've got to open your eyes to possibilities. You have the perfect 3 sitting right there. You got to get a 2. And the tight end thing, David Njoku's all right as a tight end, but he's going to drop passes all season long, no matter how many years he plays. I'm going to be the best since Ozzie Newsome. And it's like, don't even say that. Don't even use that name. You cannot use the word Ozzie Newsome or any component thereof. If you're talking about an old 50s television show, it will be and Harriet. Okay? You would say the Wizard of You're not allowed to use any component of the name Ozzie Newsome. David Njoku. R. Jones. This is what I love about Cleveland fans. It's like, while we're getting things off our chest, fuck Jenny Osmond. It's like, okay, he's kind of cute. We could fuck him. Oh, God almighty, that's funny. At any rate, these are all things that you should know by now. And if you don't know them, it's like, God help you. If you don't realize that Myles Garrett has 15 and a half sacks without really playing hard, maybe 60% of the time, he must be talented, But you got to know that he's breathing hard. I'd hate to see him after sex. That'd just be a real come down, literally. But if you don't see that, then you're not watching either. But, what a great guy Myles is? No, Myles is not a great guy. Myles is a complainer and a whiner and a self-glorifier. If you don't see that by now, I can't help you. John Johnson III always has an excuse, but if you don't see that he takes plays off and doesn't play hard all the time, I can't help you there either. If you're buying the new narrative, look at the Browns defense. Look at all the takeaways they're suddenly getting. They're finally getting the system. If you believe that, I can't help you. Bring back the defensive coordinator. Bring Joe Woods back for another year, so you'll be bitching about it. And I think this is a self-perpetuation thing. I really do. I think fans love this kind of self-perpetuation. It's kind of like a soap opera where you just hate a certain character. It's like they keep bringing that character back. So you can keep hating on that person. That'll be Joe Woods. I can do it now for you, Art Jones. That's the beauty of a new year. It's 2023. Before the show ends, if you would, little Timmy Bartholow describing Jetty Osmond driving to the basket, fumbling over himself. All right, here we go.
I don't understand why they let him dribble the ball. I don't get it. Every time I have a friend down the street who takes Ritalin. And it's because he's all over the place. He's like spastic. And Jenny Osmond's a Ritalin child. You give him the ball and say, dribble, Jenny, and he starts going full speed in a straight line, and it doesn't matter what's in front of him, and it doesn't matter whether he has the ball with him or he doesn't. He always forgets the ball behind him. Fuck him. Fuck Jenny Osmond.
There you go. You asked for it. God only knows. You got it. Toyota. Oh, God. Hey, Farrell, how you doing? Last spring and summer, always said they wanted to work and change his footwork stance. My point, coach just took a great kicker and fucked up his head. Who's to say, Farrell, whether they did that or they just deferred and said, Cade will figure it out himself, and this is the way he's done it his whole life. And, this is, even Cade York said something that I thought was very interesting. He said, I only thought I'd have to go through the mental process once, and that was going from high school to the big Division I, the big major college program. He goes, I had to make that adjustment. He goes, I thought I didn't have to do that again. It's like, whoa. You thought you were a big man on campus, Cade, but that's not the pros. I mean, this is like the best of the best, the creme de la creme. There are no people who are absolute bozos in college who make it into the pros. The guys who make it from college were really good college players. And there is a mental process, the speed of the game and how it affects your head. And yeah, if they threw a bunch of shit at him, God only knows. But somehow I just get the feeling that Cade York just didn't think it was going to be that different. And I'll say this for every rookie who ever played the game, it's no different in every sport. In baseball, it's like hitting at AAA and hitting in the bigs is completely different because you know if you're ahead of the count, you're going to get a fastball at AAA. You're going to drive it. But man, you get to the bigs, everybody's throwing like 98, 96, 97. But they also have yackers. They got curveballs, and you can see change-up, split-finger pitches, off-speed pitches on a 3-1 count and screw yourself into the ground. And once they find out what your nitro zone is, they have the control to keep it away from there. So if you're having trouble with pitches that are down and away, they're going to throw wipeout sliders at you, and you're going to strike out. We see this all the time. It's all about adjustments. And that's one of the reasons why when I saw Stephen Kwan start out so hot, it's like, this is great for the young man, but the league is going to catch up to him. And they did. And he like ended up having a month where he hit like 220, but he worked on it and he caught up and he started hitting again. He thought, this guy can hit. Every sport in the NBA, you know, what you shoot from three in college, big deal. I mean, if you're a Syracuse University player and you're playing the University of Binghamton, and, you know, that's part of your schedule, then you're going to have wide open shots. You're going to be facing the basket and just staring it down. You come to the NBA and you're Cade Cunningham, you're the man. But they know that already. And the team that's around you isn't so good. And you're not going to get open shots where you're just able to drive straight line to the basket or just line up 3-point shots. But suddenly you're going to be contested in almost every shot you take. And if you're Cade Cunningham, your percentage of shooting is at 40%. It's how you adjust. And in the NFL, it's no different. I mean, Terry Bradshaw and Troy Aikman, their rookie years, it was horrific. They were bad, really bad, legendarily bad. And they didn't have people to throw to at that point in time. Pittsburgh ended up getting him Lynn Swann, giving him Stallworth, giving him, you know. And Aikman, of course, my God, they loaded him up. And Aikman was never a guy who was a volume thrower to begin with, but he didn't have to worry about it with, you know, the running game that they had in Dallas to go along with his precision passing. It's all about adjustments. Cade York now gets it. I want to see him next year. So I want to see what he devotes himself to in the offseason and say, let's see if he gets it straight. Because he knows what he's seen, and if he's that talented, he will find a way. The same thing was true with Phil Dawson. Phil Dawson was overwhelmed at his rookie year and only hit like 62, 63% of his kicks. We saw where that went. Because if you got it good up here, you know, the only scare that we have with him is that he was mishitting so many balls, Cade York, that, you know, you can't lose belief in yourself. You have to be able to get back in the state of mind that you got to continue fighting hard to be the best you can be. And to be a kicker in that situation, and I hate, you know, I'm not going to say anything about Ohio State and Ruggles, but when you get a 50-yard field goal, and I saw what his 44-yard field goal looked like. It was spinning like a helicopter. It wasn't end over end. It was spinning like this. It had cleared, but it didn't clear by much. But he went up to that 50-yarder thinking he had to smack the motherfucker out of it. And yeah, his timing was just, he just shanked the thing. It was bad. He looked like somebody who was just trying to over club, you know, on a golf course. It was not good. but you learn that second year is very, very important. So, but it is a good comment, because we're all concerned, because even though Kevin Stefanski doesn't get it, sometimes 3 points is a good thing. Hey, Paramjot, if I'm saying your name right, Happy New Year. And I hope everything is well with you too. So let's see what else is being talked about in the chat room. It's true, Bronk. Troy Aikman had a great cast, and it wasn't all on him. And that's the thing that Deshaun Watson needs to understand, is that he needs help, and we got to give him help. He's got all the natural gifts in the world, but you cannot turn lead-footed receivers into speedsters, or guys who are bad pattern runners into good pattern runners, or people who refuse to communicate once their pattern is finished into finished receivers. There has to be a job that's done way above, I was going to say above his pay grade, but that wouldn't be true, but in the front office. Here's another thing I want to talk about that if you don't know by now. There has been all of this talk about DePodesta calling plays for Kevin Stefanski. And I just want to point out, and there has been circulating a video from 2020 in which, of course, DePodesta was aggrandizing himself at all the different aspects of the team that he was responsible for. And people were using that video to say he's calling the plays. Well, I think there's always a problem within an organization. Let's take DePodesta out of the equation. He's a fucking employee, okay? And if you put all this power in one guy's hands, that's a sign of bad ownership. This is supposed to be, and again, I'm going to do exactly what Sam Rutigliano would do. God bless you, Sam. Good man, wonderful coach, but a really good human being. It's this. It's a pyramid. Everybody knows who's at the top of the pyramid. Everybody knows. The guy who's making the most money is the guy at the top of the pyramid, the owner. But in this designation, what you have on one side, whether it's front office and head coach, and then below the head coach, there's another pyramid. So you have offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. Listen to what the problem is with the Cleveland Browns. First of all, Jimmy Haslam wants to pretend that he's transparent. I don't mean that in a, sense of being honest or any integrity orientation, but he doesn't want to be seen, right? So what he does is he puts one guy, in this case, DePodesta, at a higher position than somebody else. When it should be, if you're going to do a true pyramid situation, DePodesta, if he was up here, would report to the owner, right? But the input here and here would be coming from Andrew Berry, other members of the front office, the draft team, all of the people who do that kind of work. But you have a self-aggrandizing guy who says, I'm involved in this and I'm involved in that. That's all well and good. I can tell you this. I owned radio stations, and yes, I oversaw everything that was done. And if something rubbed me the wrong way and it was like, no, we can't do that. It may be a cute idea, but we can't do that. That's when I would step in. But I had some program directors, and, again, this is a new year. I look back at the people who really helped make my company, and they were people like Lee St. Michael's. He was my program director in Flint, Michigan. And he was also my partner on this podcast for many years. He passed away several years ago. And it hurts still to talk about that. And Don Hurley, aka Jacko, who is my program director in Binghamton, New York, and he ran the show in Binghamton. All right. He ran the show. He knew how to ferret out talent, and he would work with the guys and make them better. And so that gave me a lot more time to focus on sales, the salespeople, and the monetary situation, and advertising and promotion and things like that. So everything, nobody can look upon themselves in a self-aggrandizing way and say, oh, I do this, and this. Everybody does their part. And anybody who self-aggrandizes is looking for credit, not success. God only knows DePodesta hasn't had any success. So if we stop with this, he's calling the plays. Kevin Stefanski's doing that all by himself, but he is doing it under an umbrella. And the umbrella that he's got over him is to prevent all of the jizz coming above him from DePodesta from splatting his neat little hair. Everything that he's hearing is coming down from on top. I'd rather not have a job than have that kind of job, to be very honest with you. I don't think that's a good gig. But I don't believe that Kevin Stefanski, based upon how incredibly drab he is, how incredibly non-creative he is, I cannot believe that he's the guy we're going for it every time on fourth down. I think that is an edict from above. You know what it's like? It's like you look down at the sheet when it's time to go for two after a touchdown or to kick the extra point, and it's a purely mathematical decision. I think the decision is made for Kevin Stefanski on fourth down. He has to go for it. And you know what the problem is? He's not creative enough to come up with a play that works, which is the worst situation you could have, would be to leave that guy in a position where creativity would make him or break him and make or break the team, because he doesn't have an ounce of creativity in him. And that's going to be his demise as a head coach. Not everything is determined by the numbers. You've got to come up with plays that don't confuse your own players. But while we're looking at things, you know, you're saying fire Stefanski. Any coach, as long as DePodesta and that group is there, Jimmy and DePodesta are going to step down on whoever that coach is who's happy to get a first-time gig as a professional coach, and they're going to tell him, and remember, on fourth down, if it's 2 yards or less, you have to go for it. Let me make another suggestion. If you're going to at least use that as a way, and that's what happened with the Chargers. The Chargers, who is it, Staley? Is he their head coach? You know, he did the same thing, and he would always go for it on fourth down. You got to have an offensive coordinator or offensive coordination really in your blood in order to make those kinds of decisions. And we need a real offensive coordinator if we're going to do things that way. So that's why it's not working. You're asking the least creative person in your office to make the critical calls on fourth down. And if you don't see that, I'm sorry. I don't mean to be disappointing you in any way. Oh, God. What do I think about the hit? I'm falling a little behind in the chat room. What do I think about the hit on Marvin Harrison, cleaner targeting? I talked about this my last program a little bit. You know, that is a much harder call because, you know, you have two different angles. One angle really made it appear that it was helmet to helmet. And if it's helmet to helmet, that would be targeting. But the other angle didn't show that. And I don't know. He definitely got nailed, and he definitely was affected in the head. And could you, if you weren't an Ohio State fan, could you separate yourself and make that call? And what would you make on that call? Because Obviously, if you're a Georgia fan, you would have gone ballistic if if they call that a target. So that play is, you look at the results of the play and you say he got hit in the head, and you look at the one angle, you say it looks like he got hit in the head, but targeting is, are you making a play on the ball or are you making a play on the man? And the football that I grew up with didn't really distinguish. When Mike Ditka was a tight end for the Bears, I'll go all the way back when John Mackey was a tight end, all right, for the Colts. I don't think anybody who ran patterns over the middle, they were targets. That's the way the game was played. And the only time you see, maybe when Tatum, I don't mean to bring up an old Buckeye, smacked Darryl Stingley in the middle of the field and paralyzed him for life. Then you'd hear something maybe about that. But Ronnie Lott made a career with the 49ers as a safety of waiting for the moment for the guy and then just to blow him up. I mean, Ronnie Lott wouldn't be allowed to play in the NFL under this new set of rules, or in college football. Targeting? You got to give a man a chance to land. I mean, if a quarterback throws the ball into a narrow space where the guy goes up to catch it, you got to be there to knock it loose. Yeah, but you're not supposed to lead with your helmet. Well, if the guy's coming at you and you have to dive in order to get in front of him, how are you going to stop from leading with your head? The whole thing is bullshit. We're getting more concussions now in the NFL. Well, that's because they're reporting them. No. It's because the bullshit that they're throwing at us about a padded helmet and all that has nothing to do with nothing. They tried that in boxing with headgear. It doesn't change the percussive nature and the concussive nature of the hits. I think what was the hit on Marvin Harrison was a damn good play. Now, if you want to characterize it as targeting because of the new rules, you might be right. But what are you supposed to do? Let him come down with the ball and tap both feet down? Is that what you're supposed to do? It's a source of consternation. It's a deadly game, a dangerous game, and you're not going to soften it up by coming up with these bullshit rules, which end up putting the game in the hands of officials. That's just not a good idea. And every play can't be covered by a rule. Yeah, I'm just watching all of the WKRP references. Better the actor than the man himself. I'm all for that. Hey, look at this. The turkeys are hitting the ground like sacks of wet cement. Oh, God. I wonder if a Chihuahua was killed. Well, I had to make my own Les Nessman reference. All right. You can tell that this is just a fun show now, isn't it? Is that all? I hope that's the end of this story, Mark. Yeah, would you like some candy? I don't like the way this story is starting out, so I'm not going there. There's Renee. Stefanski needs to go. I mean, honestly, it's DePodesta and it's Haslam. The notion that you rely strictly on a system like that, a numeric, mathematical kind of computation, is foolishness, because every game is different. Every situation is different. Every team you play is different. You can't do the same thing every time. That's that. And this is true. You can imagine what's in it for DePodesta. if this turned out to be some kind of pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, can you imagine if DePodesta could verify through his success that his system really worked with the greed, the avarice in the NFL amongst owners? Can you imagine what teams would bid for him? Van Morrison had an album, all right, and it was an interesting album, although it yielded no hit songs. But he went through a point in his life where he was a Catholic, then he was a Jehovah's Witness, and then he was a Scientologist. Van Morrison was like searching, all right, not for his brown-eyed girl, but for something spiritual. And each one at a time just kept disappointing him, especially the Jehovah's Witnesses, in which he wrote a song called Kingdom Hall, if you're not familiar with that phase of Van Morrison. And then the Scientology really pissed him off when they kept coming to him for money. He went back to his Catholic base, in Ireland, that wouldn't be unusual. He did an album. No teacher, no method, no guru. That's the name of the album. No teacher, no method, no guru. Just you and me in the garden. That's the lyrics of the song. There is no method. There is no guru. There is no system. Nobody's right all the time. The fact is, nobody's going to rush to hire DePodesta because his results are shit. It's all interesting stuff. The tight ends, they were slow movers. They were like moving vans with a bullseye on their jerseys, Rick. Yep. And that's right. Let's be honest. No man would try to tackle and hit without a helmet on, or else they'd end up with a broken neck. You're damn right, helmets are weapons, and so is the taping that they do to their bodies and all of the things that make their arms like clubs. It's all weaponry. They're basically soldiers out there, and they get injured and they die like soldiers. Milt Morin, there's a name for you. Old number 89 for the Browns, Milt Morin. He caught a lot of passes for the Browns, but boy, you're absolutely right. There was no yak. It was like, I got it, boom. Tough acting, acting. And all right, so it was a clean hit, to be honest, but we still should have won the game. It's true. The play calling, the last second play calling, parent shot, you're absolutely right. That's, in the end, you got balls or you don't got balls, and that really would worry me. If I were like a fan of the University of Michigan, I would say the same thing. It's like, all you guys wanted to talk about, and what I put up on Twitter, fucking Jim Harbaugh was standing on third base, but he didn't hit a triple. Stupid ass cocksucker. I mean, use his own words against him. Oh, we were so much tougher than Ohio State. We just pushed them around like they were little rag dolls. They're not tough at all. What was the word that he used? They're soft. And he gives up 51 points to TCU. Just look with your eyes. Jim Harbaugh's not going to fucking win anything. He's a bozo. Him and his OCD shit. And Ryan Day is, he's writing his own description, isn't he? With everything on the line like that, how do you draw up that? Why would you let the clock keep running and just hand the ball off tackle? Why would you do that? And I think that's what Ohio State fans have to ask themselves during the entire offseason, which is too bad. I think, yeah, well, you would too, because look, being the offensive coordinator of the Vikings, it isn't a good gig. You're wondering why, and it's like Kirk Cousins. That's why. It's like, you know what the Vikings team is asking themselves? One of the players actually said this. It isn't just the losing. We have to ask ourselves why we lose so bad. When we lose, we get killed. That's not good for team morale. And it's usually because you're not putting any points on the board. Kirk Cousins, his history, maybe. I mean, hello. Hey, Christopher Milton. How you doing? And finally, Stefanski got hired because he is the anti-Freddie Kitchens. And that's right. But, bipolarism isn't a good disease, okay? If you're swinging from manic to depressive, you want this, but we go from one extreme to another, like, something? I live in a manufactured home, and where I come from, we don't even have a playbook because we don't know how to write. We don't know how to read neither. So what we do is we get a stick and we draw this stuff up in the dirt, and we kind of explain it that way. It's kind of a loose collaboration. And the quarterback, he can kind of say, well, maybe instead of rolling out this way, I'll roll out that way. That's Freddie Kitchens. Kevin Stefanski is more like, they look good in our uniforms. This is for the morale of the team. We have the spiffiest uniforms, and we go through our ritual. And we will storm across Poland. There's got to be a middle line. It's like somewhere in the middle. There has to be. Oh, my God. And, it really is a shame, Paramjot, because C.J. Stroud proved that he could put up the points to get the job done against what was a really good defensive team. Georgia was the top defensive team in the country. But he just went up on a bunch of people's lists. And the higher you rise as a quarterback, the better chance that you're going to end up with the Jets. And that's not good. Or the Commanders. That's not good either. Oh, funny stuff. Poor Scotty Norwood. Scotty Norwood will forever be remembered as the guy who missed the kick, but he had a really good career. Except for that kick. The Bills had more ways of losing back then with Jim Kelly than you can imagine. And the thing is that Kelly was never to blame. Just ask Kelly. He was just blaming his teammates. And Norwood was one who just took the brunt of the blame. So at any rate, that's that. I don't want to touch the story. Martina Navratilova, who I never got to meet Martina Navratilova, but in the 1980s, she was by far the best women's tennis player in the world. I had the opportunity to talk with her on the phone. That was kind of cool. She's diagnosed with 2 forms of cancer, and fortunately, stage 1. I don't like to dwell on stories like this. We keep losing people too young. These types of things. They think they've caught it on time. There's about an 85 to 90% chance that she will survive this. I hope she does. She's a fighter, and she was great in her time. We want to talk about somebody who started out as a roly-poly Czechoslovakian female player who was raw strength. and the kind of shape she got herself into, she changed women's tennis in the 1980s. She actually made Chrissy Everett hit the gym. And if you talk to Chrissy about it, she'd tell you the same thing. She upped the ante. And the thing is that by the time Martina was just finishing up, Steffi Graf came in, and Steffi Graf was on 110 meter hurdles trained runner. She was supposed to be a track and field athlete, Steffi Graf. Steffi Graf was the fastest women's player in the world and fit like you wouldn't believe. But everything started building from there. And then you see, look at Serena Williams, just like a linebacker, but she's swift of foot. Not anymore. But my God, Serena in her prime, she was hitting 128 mile an hour serves. Good God. That's where, and it's funny, that's what I talked to Martina about. Martina was explaining why she thinks she would have had a chance against Serena Williams. And love you, Martina, but the name of the show says it all. If you don't know this by now, I don't know how you would handle an 128 mile an hour serve coming at you. And the way Serena hit the ball was like a guy. But then the guys up their game too, and the equipment got more sophisticated, and the ball would jump off the racket. Amazing stuff. But we wish Martina Navratilova all good health, and I'm just hoping that that everything's all right for her. Here's a shot to call. Mike Vrabel. The Titans are going to start quarterback Joshua Dobbs against the Jaguars. That's a de facto AFC South title game. Wow. How's that for an opportunity? We always wanted to see a little bit of Joshua Dobbs. The whole thing now falls at his feet right in front of him. He's coming off of a 20 of 39 for 232 yards with a touchdown and a pick and a loss. But for those people who were projecting Malik Willis out of Liberty to become the next great scrambling mobile Lamar Jackson quarterback, Dobbs was chosen over Malik Willis, who just has looked in way over his head at the professional level. So it's really going to be an interesting game to keep your eyes on. And I hope Joshua Dobbs does good. He's a smart guy, real smart guy. And I'm just hoping that he has a good game. And it's not like I care who wins that game one way or the other, but I want to see Joshua Dobbs win that game. So I'm not yet looking at wide receivers, Paramjot. I'm really not. Not yet. I want to see the list as it comes out of people who are available, and I want to be able to delve into the draft when that time comes too. And I know we don't have any high picks, but that doesn't mean you can't put together second and third round picks and grab the kind of guy that you're looking for. I mean, even if we had a guy like, and I don't like George Pickens, and we're going to see him on Sunday, I don't like the head on that player, but you can see that he is having some success with Pickett in Pittsburgh. So, a big guy with some speed, you got to have physicality. And watching Mike Williams play, oh my God, did you see that catch that he caught with one hand and managed to toe tap it? He brought it in with the one hand from an outstretched position. Amazing. I mean, the kind of size that brings and the reach and the hands, you're not going to get a guy of that caliber in the second or third round, but you can get a guy who can get down the field faster, who is a bad matchup for a shorter defensive back. It'll also make you more effective in the red zone. All right. Let's see what else. Yeah, I'm not even talking about the Black Cow of Death. He killed the Pope. He killed a Pointer sister. And he killed Barbara Walters. No, the Black Cow of Death is not making an appearance, Bronk. You keep calling him out for him, and these horrible things. He won't point his attention toward the Steelers. He'll just kill somebody for no reason. Heisenberg. Now, you don't get that reference. Heisenberg. The black cow of death is Heisenberg, okay? Here's my man right here. Older players of every sport think they could play in today's era. People still think Bill Russell could dominate. I know. And it's all part of being the best in your time sometimes isn't enough. And they would do this with boxing all the time. But do you really think that Joe Louis would have had a chance with Muhammad Ali? What in the hell would he do? Joe Louis would be in there at 191 pounds. Ali would outweigh him by 20 pounds and would have an 80-inch reach to Joe Louis's, 75-inch reach? And he'd be fast as a middleweight and would hit him with a jab so many times that Joe wouldn't even be able to launch the vaunted right hand. I love Joe Louis, and for his era, he was tremendous. But it's like Rocky Marciano. I love that too. The people who, wave around the Confederate flags all the time. It's like, well, Rocky Marciano was undefeated. It's like, who the fuck did he fight? He fought Jersey Joe Walcott when they said Walcott was 43, when he was probably closer to 47. And Walcott bitch slapped him around the ring for 13 rounds before losing. You can't be serious about Rocky Marciano. I mean, do you think Rocky Marciano, if he came bullying in to George Foreman, you saw what happened to Joe Frazier when he came boring into George Foreman. George would have just pushed him away and just clubbed him to death like a baby seal. That's what would have happened. Yeah, but when you're the best of your time, it's kind of hard to accept that maybe an era is an era and things change and athletes change. The strength, the precision of workouts, the conditioning just becomes completely different. I love the records that stand for like huge numbers of decades. Those are the ones that are the amazing records, because records were meant to be broken in sports. That's, it's just the way it is. One thing I'll say about the Steelers, we can fuck up their season big time, the damn Yinzers. We can fuck them up bad. If you want motivation, it's them. That's your motivation. And I'd like to see an opportunity for Deshaun Watson to open up and throw downfield and do some damage to the Yinzers. But the Yinzers are going to come out with an attitude. They're going to try to hurt Deshaun Watson. Mike Tomlin is the black cow of death, and he is going to mangle anyone he can mangle. I don't like Mike Tomlin, and I don't like the way he coaches. But the fact that the Steelers still have a percentage chance of making the playoffs, pretty remarkable in and of itself. The real question is which Browns team shows up. I'm telling you what the motivation is, if nothing else. Yeah, I know. That's what he said with Anthony Schwartz, too. The only thing that speed matters to me is how fast Anthony Schwartz can leave town. That's all I care about. Oh, you still got that on your mind. Dennis drop cut. That's what we called him back then. Kelly Holcomb put it right in his hands. We never forget these things, Mark, do we? It's terrible. He would have laid on him, right? The thing with Frank, if Frank Bruno dropped in the right direction, he could have knocked down Rocky Marciano. I don't know. I'm going to ask this question. I think I know the answer, that Darius Garland is not playing tonight, as I figured would be the case. Please, if somebody in the chat room can verify, that's something on my eye there. Yeah, can verify that Darius Garland is not going to be playing. I can't imagine that he's going to be playing for a few games. Uh, that's nasty. When you get a sprain in your thumb, that's nasty shit, especially on your shooting hand. Bad news. That affects your ball handling and your shooting. And I guess we're going to be stuck with Karis LeVert. And the next question is this going to speed up the return of Ricky Rubio, who by all accounts is doing 5-on-5 practices? Would that open the floor to a couple of minutes anyway, where we would have a real verifiable ball handler instead of Karis LeVert, who can't handle the ball at all, but will insist on doing it no matter what? And will Donovan Mitchell scream at Karis LeVert, "Would you just throw me the fucking ball?" I'm just wondering, you know. That's what I'm hearing too. Doubtful. That means, nah, why risk it? Why screw around with it? The way they keep slapping and grabbing at him, they'll pull that thumb out of its socket. But we do allegedly have, although he is still questionable, Evan Mobley, his ankle, we'll see if they're going to tape him up and give him a go. We got to run this back a second time. And the Bulls are not happy about the first time, and they're going to be coming at us with a vengeance. And the real question is, Donovan Mitchell has to come up with a bigger game than he did the last time against the Bulls to make up for some points that aren't going to be there with Darius. And the other thing is, you know, if Mobley can play and just get 14 points, that helps us out too. And from their point of perspective, they need DeRozan to play 4 quarters, not 1 quarter. And they need Zach LaVine to have one of those 40-point game outbursts. It's going to be interesting at 7 o'clock tonight in Cleveland. So I'm done with what I do. And I hope that you enjoy your evening festivities. And I'll be back again on Friday to talk about the pregame and what's going down with the Browns and how we can beat the Yinzers. Until Friday, hasta la vista, Pastor Heads, and thanks for finding me today. And tell your friends that if they're still Baker Bros, we'll give them the link where the archive is, because they need to be told this is therapy. And it's kind of like tough love. They need to know. Hasta la vista, Pastor Heads. Good night.